Alright guys, and welcome to another video. Today we're going to be talking about which dungeons should you do while leveling in Fresh Classic WoW. Now obviously the quick answer to that is you should do whatever dungeons you want, whichever you find fun and whichever dungeons you need gear for. But obviously for those of you out there who want to level efficiently and save as much time as possible while leveling, I'm going to tell you which dungeons are the most bang for your buck when it comes to gaining experience, especially with the increased experience buff to quest experience. Now I've given each and every dungeon a good, average or poor rating for each and every faction because certain factions have different available quests for each dungeon. And what I'd also immediately recommend for you to do guys is to get the add-on Atlas and then the add-on Atlas quest. What this will do is tell you all the quests that you can get for a particular dungeon and give you the exact zone and coordinates on where you pick that quest, and then any pre-quests, information and everything like that. So for instance, you can turn up to Alderman with about 8 quests to complete and obviously get a big chunk of XP. Now the remainder of the video is actually going to be an old recording from an old video because I am remastering some of my old classic WoW guides. I apologise that I do have a cold in the recording, but I have a cold now, so there won't be much difference. But anyway, let's jump in. Firstly, we have Ragefire Chasm. I'm going to give this dungeon a good rating since there are 5 quests that you can very easily obtain for the dungeon. The dungeon is also incredibly convenient to get to since it's just slap bang in the middle of Orgrimmar. So if you're getting a little sick of doing quests in the Barrens, it's a perfect dungeon to run to get you some bonus XP. For number 2 we have the Deadmines. I'm going to give the Deadmines an average rating. This might turn a few heads because literally everyone does Deadmines at least once. But at the end of the day, I always do, every single dungeon at least once, just for the fun of it really, so yeah. But the issue with Deadmines is the pre-quest requirements. Some of the pre-quests are very long chain quests, and then there's the Defias Traitor escort quest, to which there is a huge competition for. You have to be waiting around for ages, and it often bugs when a server is overpopulated. Then there are two decent quests that are done outside the dungeon, but again there's very limited spawns for those quest mobs. There will be competition and a lot of waiting, and if other people who are in your dungeon group don't have the quests, you might, they just might decide to not take the detour in the first place and just leave you, or leave for another group. So it's really up to you, but I just think Deadmines experience wise is a little bit of a time waste. And obviously for Horde it's an even bigger time waste. For number 3 we have Wailing Caverns. I'm going to give Wailing Caverns a good rating. There are a number of quests you can pick up quite quickly and easily, but if you do the pre-quests, you can obtain 8 quests for this dungeon and also get an extra quest from a drop in the dungeon. It's also not so far away for the Horde to travel to, but obviously as Alliance I would avoid it. Next we have Shadowfang Keep. This dungeon has 3 quests which are very easy to obtain, so I'm going to give it a good rating, but it's only worth it if you do both of these quests, well all of these quests. For the Alliance I don't really think it's worth it. Next we have BFD, Black Fathom Depths. I think this is a good dungeon for both factions since you have 3 quests available, and it also provides an extremely good one for casters. The quests themselves are very easy to obtain. There's no real pre-quest requirement, and yeah, the dungeon's fairly easy to get to as well. And by the way guys, if you are looking for an extremely efficient power leveling add-on, you may want to check out Reset XP. All the info for that will be in the description of this video, like my discount code and everything like that. But anyway, let's move on. For number 6 we have the Stockades. The Stockades has 4 quests that can be instantly picked up and a pre-group quest from the wetlands, so it gets a good rating. The dungeon is also extremely convenient to get to, and it's an extremely fast run, so this is a huge wad of XP if you do this run. Next we have Nomeron. Nomeron has quite an abundance of quests easily available for the Alliance. You can get up to about 9 quests. There are quests within the dungeon which give a decent amount of XP, so that's another thing to bear in mind. And if you're going to run the dungeon as Horde, remember to do the pre-quest to unlock the teleporter in Booty Bay, which later links into the only quest you can get for Nomeron, because walking there obviously definitely isn't worth it. Next we have RFK. There are 2 quests per faction and another 2 neutral quests. So for the Horde I would give this a good rating, but for the Alliance I'd give it an average rating. And this is simply because the Horde don't have that far to travel, whereas the Alliance do. Next we have a Scarlet Monastery, which is actually one of my favourite dungeons, which I will always do at least once. But unfortunately the dungeon isn't massively worth doing for experience efficiency. It's, more for the loot. That's the main reason why people do this dungeon. but you know, there's not guaranteed you're gonna get the loot, so really you could be wasting a lot of time. But anyway, firstly for the Horde, I give us an average rating. There are 3 good quests for the dungeon, but they require a full run for you to complete, which, you know, that can be even more time. And for the Alliance, I'll give it a poor rating for the same reasons, but also because it just takes ages to get there, and it really just is a bit of a time waste. For number 10, we have RFD. For this dungeon, I'm going to give it an average rating, but that's only because there are decent quests for you to go do outside and inside the dungeon. However, in my experience, people always mess up the escort quest inside the dungeon, so I just avoid the dungeon entirely. You know, but you know, it's up to you. Our 11th dungeon is Alderman. This is definitely worth doing for both factions. It gets a good rating for both of them, but it's especially good for Alliance because you can stack loads of quests for this dungeon. I think, you know, it's pretty much over 8 quests that you can obtain. So yeah, this is a good one, but some of them are done outside the dungeon, so that's worth noting. Next we have Maradon. I'm going to give Maradon an average rating for both factions, and this is simply because Maradon is a little bit of a mess, right? It's a very complicated instance to get your head around. It's taken me a few playthroughs to finally figure it out, and most people you're going to be grouped with, they just won't have it figured out. So normally it becomes a huge time wasting experience whenever you go to Maradon, and I would say Maradon runs until endgame, until level 60. For number 13 we have Zul'Farrak, which gives a good rating for both factions. This is simply because there are a number of easy quests to obtain from Gadgeton, which is just around the corner from the entrance of a dungeon, so it's very easy to stack up loads of quests and get loads of XP. You cannot complain. So the second to last dungeon we have is the Sunken Temple, which I'm going to give a poor rating. There aren't many quests for the dungeon, and the quests that are available are long quest chains, which is very time consuming, and the dungeon itself is time consuming, so it will be tight. It will just take ages for you to collect all the correct quests for this dungeon. I will just save this one until you're level 60. Lastly we have Blackrock Depths, which is definitely a good rating for a number of reasons. Firstly, there are over 41 quests for you to complete. Right, we've always described Blackrock Depths as its own entire zone, and that's what it is. Mini quests and bosses will give you extra XP. You've also got... what you will be doing when you run through BRD is you'll be looting some of your pre-raid best in slot gear from the dungeon. So at level 55 you may as well do BRD runs because you're going to do them at level 60 anyway, right? So you may as well do them now. It doesn't slow down your leveling speed because you're basically acting like a level 60 at level 55 because you're out there getting your best in slot gear, which will save you time at level 60, right? So as BRD and honestly by extent Sunken Temple and Maradon, they are actually worth doing if you're going in there for your best in slot gear. But if you're not getting your best in slot gear, then they are a bit of a time waste.
Anyway guys, that's going to be the end of the video. My name is MetaGoblin. Until my next video, ciao.